Hey everyone, welcome back to Peak Human. I'm Brian Sanders. Thanks so much for sharing with friends and family. Thanks for giving this review on iTunes or any podcast app. And also, like I always say, go back to episode 1. Go back and listen to the great episodes. Maybe you can just pick through, find ones that interest you, but there's so many great ones out there. I just encourage people to go back and listen. I don't go for quantity, I go for quality. And I should mention the Food Lies intro once again. It's on the Food Lies YouTube channel. Check it out. We handmade almost every single shot. It's only 3.5 minutes, but it is good. It shows you the level of quality we're doing for this film. We're working hard daily. We got a small team, but everyone's dedicated. Everyone's on the mission. It's going to be so good. We're trying to finish by the end of the year. So on to this episode with Dave Asprey, my pal from the internet. We started talking online a little bit. He happened to be in Austin, so I grabbed him. We came up and we did a show together live. It was pretty cool. He's pretty much aligned with most things Sapien. I had some questions for him though because I heard him doing some low protein content. And guess what? I don't think he's actually low protein. He was talking about crushing big 16-ounce steaks. We covered a lot of interesting topics. He also kind of understands how the world works. He doesn't buy into a lot of narratives. He's red-pilled. He's awake. So great conversation. Check it out. A little bit more about Dave. Dave Asprey is the father of Biohacking, a 4-time New York Times bestselling author, the founder of several companies such as Bulletproof and Upgrade Labs, as well as the host of the award-winning podcast, The Human Upgrade. Dave's mission is to empower the entire globe with information and knowledge that unlocks the superhuman in everyone at any age, working with world-renowned doctors, researchers, scientists, and global mavericks to uncover the latest, most innovative methods, techniques, and products for enhancing mental and physical performance. So catch this one on YouTube or just listen to the audio. Fun time talking to Dave. He's got a lot of experience. He was helping me with some business stuff. I do appreciate him and what he's been doing and his experience. So that leads me to Nose to Tail. I gave him some of the liverwurst and some of the biltong. We actually stopped by the Sapien compound, saw how it was going. That was cool. Building brick and mortar spaces is super necessary. He did that with Upgrade Labs, and I've met people through that in the Santa Monica area, and a bit of inspiration for the Sapien compound or Sapien Center, where we are building community in person. We're gonna have Nose to Tail products there. You can get Nose to Tail products online though. Nosetotale.org, mainly online right now. Got all the meat, you got the biltong, the other dried meats, you got the body care, you got seasonings, you got hats. We do it all, and we do it all good. We do it all the best way possible. Regenerative Meat. We have 4 ranching families that raise this meat here in Texas. I've been to their ranches. I know how it works. They use all the best practices, organic, no pesticides, free-range diets on diverse rangeland for the ruminant animals, for the pigs and chickens. They are also pasture-raised, and with soy and corn-free diets, all natural, organic diets, very low in PUFA. So the meat should be low in PUFA as well. You could make a box on nosetotale.org, get it sent to you. We had to take a little break because it was so hot, but we'll be back soon. So you can order now, and we'll probably be shipping out next week. You can get the other stuff though, like the biltong and the seasonings, no matter what. Those aren't affected by the heat. And so yeah, please do make a package. We have free shipping options. Go to nosetotale.org, support all the family ranchers, and support our little team here. We're just doing what we can. We're not selling all the processed foods with all the profit margin. It's hard work. We don't get paid much, but we're trying to support ourselves. So go to nosetotale.org, give us a look, subscribe to the Sapien newsletter, sapien.org, and that's about it. Enjoy this one with Dave Asprey. All right, Dave Asprey, hello.
What's up, Brian?
Welcome to Austin.
I love Austin.
I hear you are moving here.
That's the plan.
That's amazing. I was talking to you about how it's the center of the universe these days. People probably understand that. That's all they hear about. Oh, Austin, Austin.
Well, it's either Austin, Dallas is attracting a lot of people, and Florida is too. It's almost like people who care about control over their own health and their own biology might want to be in states that have backed that. Certainly, being in Canada for a long time, it's sad what's happened up there. So I don't think that's what's right for me.
I'm glad you escaped. I escaped LA.
Oh man, that's like worse than Canada. Not that I don't like Canada, I do. It's just that it's not okay what's happening there in terms of travel and all. So in LA, man, it's really sad. It has gone over the last 10 years from an amazing place with this vibrant energy to this like fearful, criminal energy, both from the government and the people. So many friends have left. It's really sad.
Yeah, I was part of the mass exodus after COVID started, and I'm here in Austin. And yeah, people here care about it's so great how they're all on the same page. They care about health, they care about their own autonomy, they care about entrepreneurship.
I absolutely support anyone's right to be a breatharian, or to be vegan, or to be carnivore, or to do what I do, which is all grass fed and low inflammation veggies and fruits and stuff like that. But if anyone's going to tell me I have to do one of those things, I'm probably going to just punch them in the face. I've had enough. I've really had enough. And so the reason we allow people to make decisions like that is because evolution happens. So when people make really poor choices that destroy their fertility, they will have less children, or the children they have will have lower IQs and be less healthy and less resilient. Yes, I'm talking about the plant-based people right now. And yes, I'm the author of a well-read book on human fertility. Like I went very deep on this. And I don't understand, though, how it would be okay for me to tell you what you have to eat, or that you can't eat something you want to eat. If you want to go eat scorpion soup, well, see what happens. But I just support that. And I also support your right to ski at high speed into a tree if you want to. Right? You can do all kinds of stupid stuff, or eat a bunch of fried potato chips. It's all you, right? And I would absolutely, go to war to protect your right to be the dumbest person on the planet, right? And I want my right to be the dumbest person on the planet too. And I think that spirit's alive in Austin.
It is. Yeah, I will protect vegans' right to free speech. Absolutely.
Yeah, free speech and free, they can eat all the stuff that my animals eat. I'm fine with that. You can have grass soup and everything. It's totally fine, right? But you tell me that I can't talk about meat, or you tell me that I'm not allowed to eat something that sustains me. Isn't that kind of an act of war?
Not in 2022. It seems like it's run of the mill.
I don't know. In Vietnam, one of the strategies that the U.S. deployed that was really controversial was bombing supply lines for clean water and for food. In fact, lots of wars we do that for food. But those are basic things that are necessary. And if someone's going to say, oh, we're not going to let you have what makes you thrive, Dave, because we think it's wrong for whatever reason, that's what you do when you're attacking an enemy and you're weakening them. Since I am not anyone's enemy, I'm also not a target.
I am right there with you. It sounds conspiratorial, but
not at all.
I know.
It's just human behavior. If I assert my right to make you do what I want against your will, that is in and of itself an act of aggression.
But everyone's just used to it these days. And if you talk about that,
shut up! You can't say that. Sorry, I'm triggered. I'm triggered right now.
But people are accepting it. That's my biggest problem. Most of the people out there just accept this. That they're okay with other people telling them what to do, governments telling them what to do.
Check 1, 2.
Think most people accept that. That's a story.
Most people,
no,
maybe not.
What's going on is most people sit there and they seethe and they get pissed off, and then they do nothing, and they don't like it, but they feel powerless. And there is probably only 20% of people who are the way you think most people are. Think about this. During World War II in Germany, 9% of the population was a member of the Nazi Party. Only 9%. And the data that I have, and I may be working on a book on narcissism and sociopathy, but maybe 4 to 6% of people are sociopaths and psychopaths. And there's another probably 20% that are just really, really profound narcissists, which means they just feel like they deserve, and whatever is yours is theirs because they deserve it, and they'll take it and tell themselves they're good people while they do it. So we're dealing with just some malignant social conditioning, lots of trauma, and a few really bad people. Problem is they can run circles around people who feel powerless, or people who are actually trying to help other people, because they're just hard to spot. It's a long-standing societal problem we've had for generations.
But what do you think? Do you think 80% of people out there are just floating through life? People call them the sheep. Like, do you still think that exists?
That 80% of people are floating through life? I don't know the percentages, and it probably depends.
80-20 rule. I was just, yeah.
It's very hard to say. It depends which people you listen to, right? Some of the spiritual teachers that I've had would actually support that. In fact, one of the more rigorous groups believes that. But the bottom line is, you'll never know what's in my head, right? You have a lens on reality that's based on your evolution as a human, and I have a lens on reality. So we both look at the same thing, but we don't see the same thing. And this is provable that every person and every species has its own way of seeing the world, and there is no way you can actually see reality. If you think about it, if you had a life-size map of Austin, how useful would that be? It'd be useless because you have to unroll it on Austin, and then you might as well just walk. So your perception of the world is a tiny, tiny, tiny little bit of what's actually out there, right? So I do my meditation work every day before I'm drinking my coffee, or maybe as I'm drinking it, where I just remind myself of that and just understand that different people are doing different things. You'd be grateful for that, because if everyone saw the world exactly the way I do, the world would probably be full of assholes.
Yeah. I mean, we can't all be Texas and Florida. And I don't know. That got really philosophical, and I like it. But I just kind of have a problem with people just accepting things handed down to them and just going through life like a sheep.
Well, hang on a second here. How much of your work is based on Weston A. Price?
Probably a lot of it. Probably 80% of it.
Handed down to you, Brian? I don't think you did your own work enough. I'm going to judge you right now, and I'm going to be triggered.
Yeah. No, hey, Weston, I don't know. That's a good question, because I do talk about Weston Price a lot, and I think all the people in the health field that I respect really respect his work, and it's kind of being proven. So it's not like I actually don't just take it for granted. I look at all the people proving that out today.
Well, so a lot of good stuff is handed down from people. The difficulty we have is knowing which people to trust to hand stuff down to us. So one of the things that's made me able to do what I do is that I spent more than a decade running an anti-aging nonprofit group. And every month, I would interview someone who is usually 2 or 3 times my age. And there's a name for that. It's called wisdom. So, and these were people who were getting younger. And I realized, I can use these to reverse I used to weigh 300 pounds, and, I was a vegan, and all the bad stuff that happened to my health. So I learned from people who were credible sources. And I realized that one of the things that I could do after time was I could curate people who directly are handing things down. And what listeners can do is they can say, I am going to choose what I put in my brain. And then you assess a person. How good of a curator are they? How good of a creator are they? Not a Instagram, TikTok, I can twerk creator, but how good of a creator of new information or of new viewpoints, and how compatible are they? Not do I like them, but are they worthy? And if you can do that, you end up assembling your team of, I'm going to call them elders, and I certainly rely on people who are 30, 40 years older than I am to give me knowledge of things that I don't know how to see yet. And so we all do it, and then we all get mad at other people for not believing what we believe. The difficulty comes when an algorithm or a PR company, and by the way, the father of PR was from Germany, and he said, well, the name propaganda is burned, so let's just call this public relations. And that's the history of PR in the world. So it's kind of sad, but those guys plus algorithms are changing what people allow into their brains. And that can be frustrating. But even then, that's part of our operating system. We're wired to be able to be programmable that way. It's just your job to know it. And that's why I created biohacking. The idea is that you have full control of your own biology, but you do it by changing the environment around you. And that includes your information environment. That's why people should be listening to your show.
It's a nice plug for the show. No, I think people have a problem discerning who to trust. I think that's kind of what your spiel was about, is so many people, they just, even in my friends or people who are, quote, like red-pilled and see through it, then they'll watch some random video that's maybe even poorly put together and just on some weird Rumble channel. And then they just believe it all. And they're just like, oh, so this is this.
This is one of those really fun things. I have some friends who really get into the conspiracy thing. And this is what you do if you're in power. You love conspiracy people. Like, oh yeah, there's definitely vampire blood in there too. Yep, yep. And you just add a little sprinkling of aliens, and then all the true stuff they're saying is thrown out. And it's a masterful PR tactic. It's been done forever. So you bring in, the crazy cat lady to make sure that she's associated with someone who has 25 years of industry experience and just burn their career to speak the truth, right? Because the cat lady gets a lot of attention, and the people with real knowledge and real experience get sort of marginalized. And this is how you can hide the craziest stuff in plain sight. People just don't see it, because if you repeat it enough times, our brains are programmed to start to believe it. When I say they're programmed that way, what most people don't understand, I learned from the neuroscience company I've called 40 Years of Zen. I've had 1,500 entrepreneurs come through over the past 7 or 8 years. And we have this big database of what do entrepreneur and high performance brains look like. But what we do know is that there's between a quarter and a third of a second between when something happens and when your brain gets the first electrical signal that it happened. But something's happening in you. Your body is doing stuff. And this is why you'll pull your hand away from something hot before you can think about it, because there's this interesting gap. When I say something, your brain doesn't hear it for a quarter second if you're young and fast, and a third of a second if you're normal. Right? So our perception of reality has some space for a filter in there, and then our body and our brain will do a whole bunch of shortcuts to save electricity. And this is why one of the most important things you can do if you want to be a fully conscious human being is eat the stuff and don't eat the wrong stuff that lets your brain have enough electricity. In other words, be really good at taking air and food, combining them and making electricity. Because when you have enough electricity, not only will you repair yourself and stay younger, but you'll actually be able to perceive reality faster, and you'll be able to tell your brain, hey, don't do the intellectual shortcut that saved a lot of electricity, do the work. And when you do that, oh wow, why didn't I see that before? You didn't see it before because you didn't have enough energy. And the whole area where I'm taking my community, and for people who don't necessarily know my background, I don't know if you're doing a bio or something, but I'm the guy who started Bulletproof Coffee and have a giant podcast and New York Times bestsellers and stuff like that, created biohacking as a field. But my new thing, Danger Coffee, it's called Danger because what do dangerous people do? They do what's right. Like, they have the energy to be kind instead of reactive. They're hard to program. They do scary things, right? Like, who knows what you might do if you have the power to be dangerous, because the opposite of dangerous is weak. So I want a world full of people who are absolutely 100% dangerous. I'm dangerous, but I'm also nice. And it's easier to be nice when you know you can handle things. And it's very difficult to be nice when you feel like you're weak and helpless and powerless. And at that point, you're reactive and you're easy to control, easy to program. And you'll probably do incredibly bad things when you're in a group of people versus if you're a dangerous person. So I'm creating the most dangerous people on the planet I can, thus Danger Coffee.
I love it. I'm going to say my point one more time, though. I think most people aren't dangerous. I think there's a small group of people, and
it's always like that.
Well, yeah, it has to be. That's why there's the 80-20 rule. That's why bell curves exist.
Do you know why peaceful protest doesn't work?
Tell me.
This is an article, either the Atlantic or the New Yorker, which was surprising because those are both magazines or newspapers, whatever you want to call them, that are a little bit more liberal. But this was an academic study, a rigorous one, looking at every peaceful protest movement, even going back to Gandhi, and finding what did the successful ones have in common. What the successful ones all had in common was a small, violent faction who was causing property damage or blowing stuff up even, and just a small one. And it was very far disassociated from the millions of people marching. But the reason the governments changed in those situations was because they were afraid that all of the what you're calling the sheep people, whatever,
the masses,
there you go, that the masses who are protesting. Keep in mind, these are not dumb people. These are people who are so upset that they're complaining. Okay, I would argue that complaining doesn't do very much most of the time. I'm talking to you, Greta Grundelberg, whatever your name is, from Sweden. Something should be done. No, just go do it already. Anyway. So you have these masses, and they're sitting there and they're angry and they're complaining and they're upset and they're maybe blocking access to things or whatever. But when there's a spark over here, the government sees, oh no, if all these people start on that path, we will be taken out of power. And that's why I think there's a place for peaceful protests. I do not want there to be violence. And if people or governments or companies or whatever it is make such a strong situation that it pushes people to violence, then the world's going to get really ugly really fast. And I don't want that to happen, which means governments and companies cannot have policies that prevent people from living their lives. Because if they do it, it inevitably, throughout all of history, always leads to the downfall of great empires. And that's stupid. Just let people have enough room to do their thing. And then people won't get all complainy or violent. But right now, things are out of balance. And I want the world to continue going the way it is now. So, we need a balance here, and we don't have one. So the balance will come from lots and lots of dangerous people who simply say, no, I won't do that anymore.
That's my kind of person. What you're talking about diet. We got to talk some nutrition talk.
Sure.
And I do believe that if you're eating the wrong foods, you are weaker, sicker, easier to control. Again, that sounds like conspiracy theory.
Why
But
do you weaken yourself by saying you believe that? Can you just state it as a fact at this point?
I think it is. Yeah, absolutely. You're using like neuro-linguistic stuff on me. You already told me. I made a joke that I was allergic to making money earlier.
And I'm like, shut up. That's wrong.
I just don't care that much about making money.
Take some Benadryl. You'll make money there. You cured your allergies. The thing is, I'm of a similar mindset. There are people who really want to make money for its own sake. I was one. I was in my 20s. I did my Think and Grow Rich thing. And I said, I'm going to have $1 million by the time I'm 23. And this was back when $1 million was worth like $6 million now. Thank you, Biden, for inflating our currency the way you did. And hey, tell your dog not to eat whatever's in my bag over there. I hope there's no xylitol in there. I'm pretty sure there's not. That's awesome.
She'll find something to eat.
It doesn't bother me. I love dogs. All right. So where was I? Talking about masses.
Making money.
Let's talk about money. Okay.
Yeah.
So you can edit all this in wherever you want. So I can say Think and Grow Rich maybe didn't work that well because I didn't have $1 million when I was 23, but I had $6 million when I was 26. And that was pretty amazing. I lost it when I was 28. And the reason I had it is I said, making money will make me happy. And when I had $6 million, I looked at a friend. This is at the company that held Google's first servers. I was a co-founder of a part of it. And like everyone made a ton of money. They probably shouldn't have made. But I looked at my friend and I said, I'll be happy to have 10 million. Okay. I'm 26 years old. I have $6 million, which is about really close to 20 million in today's money. But I couldn't be happy from it. And it taught me this really big lesson. The reason that I do what I do, and you need to have enough money, and you'd have enough money to do what you want to do. So when you help people, when you do something that matters and you make money, and it buys you the right to continue doing what you're doing at the next level up. So if you want to create change, you want to actually create a revolution in the food supply so that we actually use our resources to make food that makes people really healthy, well, then you need resources to do it. You need a team to do it, and that team needs to eat. And it's okay to make money to pay them. But if you're making the money so you can, film yourself rolling around in it, then you probably need a therapist.
No, this is a good point. In my podcast I did yesterday, I mentioned my company Knows the Tail, and the guest was saying, you shouldn't be ashamed. I said I was ashamed I don't like marketing, but she said, you should let people know about it. You're helping people by providing them with better meat. So it's like, you got to switch the mindset of it. I was like, so it's not me just trying to make money. It's me introducing people to a company, my company. It does good.
You're completely right. It's actually sad. When I was in Silicon Valley for the first half of my career as a computer hacker and all that, I got really frustrated because the best technologies would almost never win. You're like, why did they do it that way? What wins is the best marketing. So I consider it every inventor's and every entrepreneur's job. It's their sacred responsibility to be good enough at telling their story that their product actually makes it into the world and succeeds. Because you could build the best steak on the planet, and if only 4 people ever eat it, it doesn't matter. It's actually masturbation. It felt good and nothing productive happened at the end. So maybe starting a company that you never talk about is just a big, expensive form of masturbation.
Nose to tail, guys, nosetail.org. Get your grass-fed meat. All right.
All right.
All right. So wait, where did we get off track? We were talking about people who don't eat well are easy to control. They are not as smart. Their brains don't work as well.
All right. So the not as smart thing is maybe a little bit untrue and triggering.
Okay. Well, your brain doesn't work as fast.
They may be slower and they may have brain fog. Right. But that's meaningful stuff. When we say slower, there's a speed of electrical transmission over nerves. And when you make those nerves out of low quality fats, you actually have problems with electrical transmission. Myelin is this fatty layer that covers nerves that get used a lot, including in the brain. And a lot of autoimmune conditions and a lot of toxin conditions and a lot of I ate too much plant fat conditions involve weakened myelin, things like MS even. So when I was profoundly affected by toxic mold, and when I had become a raw vegan to try and fix myself, actually first I was a vegan, then a raw vegan, and I tried everything on the planet. Absolutely one of my biggest things, probably number 2 after fixing my mitochondria, was fixing my myelin and having the right things to have good fat. And it's funny, earlier I mentioned that 240 milliseconds to 350 millisecond, that gap between reality and when your brain does it, it declines with age in almost everyone except me. I still have 240 milliseconds. So it's called P300 is what that is. But that means that I have the brain that can sense reality the same way an 18-year-old's brain does. I did not have that probably when I was 18 because I was so unhealthy. But it can be done where when you eat right, you provably are better at making energy. You provably have more resilience. Your hormones are provably better. Your inflammation is provably better. And this is something that we measure and actually train up at 40 years of Zen. You can measure the amount of electricity in someone's brain. And over the course of a week, when I'm feeding them the right stuff, giving them the right supplements, and training their brain like you would a muscle, you can increase the amount of electricity flowing through your brain. That's kind of incredible because that does say that you can change things. I also have my good friend, Dr. Daniel Amen, in a documentary. Okay. I have my good friend, Dr. Amen, either on my podcast or in a documentary. I don't remember which one. Who's saying that, yes, you absolutely can raise your IQ because your IQ can vary on a daily basis by even 5 or 10 points based on what you ate and what you did the night before. That's a toxin effect. And the long-term effect is that you can have a kind of resilience, a kind of electrical feeling. This idea that you can push the accelerator down and your car will go faster and faster and faster. And when you're eating a plant-based diet, you're eating the kind of diet that I did, or if you're eating something you're allergic to, even if it comes from an animal, a lot of people are allergic to eggs, it doesn't matter. When something's blocking you, you push the accelerator down and you realize it's hitting the floor and you're going as fast as you can. And all of a sudden you start slowing down, but you can't push the accelerator through the floor. And that's how I lived my 20s and my early 30s. I was going, I feel helpless. I'm actually kind of scared. I bought disability insurance because my labs, all the doctors said there's nothing wrong with you. Something doesn't feel right. I don't know what it is. And it was that feeling that I don't have anything left. And where I am now is very different, where my brain works provably, measurably faster than it should. And things are so effortless and I can remember all these things and I can do things that I did not have the capacity to do 20 years ago. That's a factor of food. Give me canola oil, soybean oil, take away my grass-fed stuff, make me eat a bunch of inflammatory grains and beans and legumes and all these kale and all these other allegedly healthy foods. I would regress to a farting, fat, unhappy, slow person. And I probably wouldn't be a very nice person either.
Idiocracy.
There you go.
It's great.
Electrolytes.
Movie. Gotta watch that movie. Brondo. Yeah. Oh man, great movie. But I think that's where the societies are going. That there's the certain percentage of us that understand everything you just said, and then there's people stuck in the matrix, and they're still eating the foods that are billed as healthy.
I've often wondered about this. So there's all these different conspiracy theories that, is it aliens? Is it Illuminati? Is it the Rockefellers and all that?
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea. And this is the thing about conspiracy theories. You only know what you know. And it's really easy to look at someone and even do this. And this is one of the things that happens so often, especially in the calorie in, calorie out, like angry crowd and in the vegan crowd. You're lying. Okay, when you say that, you are saying that you have the ability to read the other person's mind, to say that you know what they know, and that they are consciously choosing to lie. Okay, that is a personal attack, and there is actually no way that you can do that. What you can do is you can say, you're wrong, which is totally different than you're lying, and you're giving the person credit for making an honest mistake. Now, if you find a person, you catch them in a lie where you said this here and you said this here, therefore you're lying. Okay, that's a lie. Mm-hmm. But the vast majority of debate is people who make mistakes. They had a false assumption and then they took action on it. So conspiracy theorists say, I know what happened. No, actually, you're guessing what happened. You can say that the story you told me makes no sense, therefore the story is wrong. Here's 5 other possible stories. But unless you have certain information, it's very hard to know which of those stories is real. So you don't have to know. You can say this story is bullshit without replacing it with another story that may be bullshit. And what I wonder is there some small group of evil people who know that grass-fed nutrition works better and their minds are working really, really well, and they're plotting to make sure they're the only ones who have grass-fed meat, and they want the rest of the world to eat mealworms or die? I kind of have a hard time imagining that, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe it's true, but I'm not going to believe wholeheartedly that it's true. And when you do that, you take the charge off conspiracy theories because they're addictive. You get a ton of dopamine from that stuff, and you can go so deep on Telegram and all these things. It's completely dysfunctional to do that. It's a distraction. So yes, it doesn't really appear that what we've been told about JFK is true, right? Or RFK, right, who was also assassinated. Now I'm going along saying, I think this is pretty much BS. And then suddenly a guy appears on my show, Daniel Brown, not the Daniel Brown who wrote Angels and Demons, but Daniel Brown from Harvard, who's the most tenured expert in hypnosis on the planet. And right in the middle of my show, unexpectedly, he's like, oh yeah, I looked at Sirhan. I spent hundreds of hours with him, and we know absolutely that he was programmed with hypnosis to kill. I'm like, did you just disclose this on my little podcast, little comparatively? Said they should do a documentary. He goes, oh yeah, they did a documentary, and they deleted my 8 minutes in the documentary and then audited my taxes for 7 years. Now that's direct information from a world-leading expert that something really bad happened. And I consider that kind of thing to be credible. So bad stuff does happen. But unless you have direct information, you probably don't want to just go all in on it and then start buying guns or burying seeds or whatever it is you think is going to be the right behavior. First, you should focus on being resilient, on learning how to feel safe no matter what's going on around you, so you can make rational action without making irrational action based on aliens.
That's a good way to look at it. Not something being not provable. You shouldn't waste your time. I have a mentor in this kind of understanding of the world that I grew up with. He's a very smart guy.
Nice.
And he's helped me to not go down the wrong paths, not get caught up in conspiracy theories, but there is so much reality out there, and not to waste time on things that aren't provable. Like, is there a secret cabal? It doesn't matter if maybe there is, maybe there isn't. It doesn't really matter. Things are still happening, and we can, try to figure out why they're happening or how to stop them. But you don't waste time on things that aren't provable. Don't waste time on the distractions. I think there's a lot of distraction stuff thrown out there to throw us off, make us hate each other, have arguments about things that ultimately don't matter, right? And I just want to not fall into those traps. And yeah, it's like spin your wheels, right? You can spin your wheels all day looking up different things about any topic, right?
Yep. Well, one of the things that kind of drives me crazy. You remember Pizzagate?
Yeah.
So there's some poor guy who fell into the conspiracy trap, and it is addictive, just like porn is addictive, right? And falls into it and shows up at the pizza place with an AR-15 looking for the basement. The pizza place doesn't actually have a basement, right?
Yeah.
So that doesn't appear to be credible. Now, there's a small group of people listening that's going, Dave, how could you say that? You just don't know. You're obviously a CIA stooge. Okay, like fine, whatever. By the way, I have been called a CIA stooge. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's not true. Maybe they're controlling
You're
my
programmed,
mind,
yeah.
right? So you go through all that, and I don't really know, but I do feel sorry for that guy because he was trying to do good. He just had false assumptions. And what I believe is happening in most of the world is something I learned from a religious studies professor, a rabbinical scholar in my undergrad. And he said, what do all these religious cults? We just looked at Jim Jones and Hamas and all these things. What do they have in common? Like, why does religion lead to violence? That was our question. And magically, I raised my hand and I said, they're all irrational. And the professor was really smart. He looked at me and he goes, actually, no. Every one of these groups is 100% rational. And I was pretty offended. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, they do all these stupid things. He said, no. If you believe their assumptions, their behavior is 100% right. And the assumptions there was, if I blow up people, I go to heaven. If you truly believe that, then you should blow up people, right? Likewise, if you truly believe that you're going to save the world by eating stuff that makes you sick and weak and infertile, well, then you should do that, right? Because you care about saving the world and you're a good person, right? So what's going on here is there are bad people, usually in marketing, who are convincing people of something that's not true. And then people take rational action based on that. So if your rational action is, well, I'm just going to eat whole grains and this stuff because it's going to reduce my carbon footprint, I'm going to ignore the fact that like 80% of emissions are from industry and cruise ships and all these other things. And I'm going to do this so I feel like I'm doing something. That's kind of a bad decision, but it's only a bad decision if you realize your assumption is wrong. Otherwise, you have the ability to sit there and look like you're incredibly stubborn. And this is how it feels to you and me, because you're saying, but I know it's healthy because I saw this documentary propaganda, What the Health Thing, which is like the worst piece of slimy propaganda ever. And I read the China study, which is incredibly flawed. And I know that I want to save the world for the next generation. And if you don't do what I do, you're selfish. If you believe this as your fundamental lens on reality, you and me are evil people and we should be stopped.
I don't think there are evil people in the world. I just thought
it.
Well, no, there are some, but like I was even thinking about like the CEO of Monsanto, like whatever. This guy thinks he's doing great. You get my, it's like this guy's like, I'm helping the world get more agriculture and monocrops, and that helps feed more people.
I actually sat next to the chief marketing officer of Monsanto at a Stanford neuromarketing conference about 6-7 years ago.
Neuromarketing, I'm scared already.
Well,
that
you should be
exists.
Scared. Yeah. And he was actually a really nice guy. I don't remember his name off the top of my head. And he truly, fervently believed that what he was doing was helping the planet. And you and I are like, you are the single source of destruction of our soil, and you have to be stopped at any cost, and you're guilty of war crimes. Right? So how can there be such a flaw, such a gap? Which of us is right? Well, you and I would definitely agree that we're right. I think there's enough scientific evidence to back what we're saying. But when you look him in his eye, does he go to sleep at night going, ha, 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 I'm destroying the planet? No, he says, I'm feeding starving people. And I have, because of my work at Bulletproof, and by the way, I'm doing Danger Coffee now. I am not associated with Bulletproof. I'm still a major shareholder, but I've been removed from my activities there. So I've met the former CEO of Pepsi. I've met the entire senior leadership team of Coke and all of the big consumer packaged goods companies, many of them. And you know what? All of them want to do good in the world. I've had this conversation with more than one. Dave, we love what you're doing. We want to bring this into our companies, but if we increase the cost of a protein bar by half of 1 cent, our competitors are going to have something that's cheaper in the market, and people always buy the cheapest food. How do we maintain the ability to sell food? Because if we make it even slightly more expensive, someone else will always make a more, they wouldn't say this, but I'm translating, like a more garbage product. So there's this race to the bottom because people are still largely saying, well, the number one place to cut costs is on food. In my world, it's the last place I cut costs. I will live in my car and eat grass-fed if I have to, versus live in a nice place and eat grains, because I do not like what grains do to the world. I don't like what they do to my biology or to my brain. Like it's not okay. Like I'd live under a bridge and eat meat versus be a vegetarian or a vegan because it makes you ill.
I love it. I do use the CEO of Coke as an example too of the people think that they're doing good.
Well, the thing is, it's not. I'm sure that they know that corn syrup isn't very good for you. Yeah. But I met with the
balance your calories though.
Pepsi is more of a calories are calories because of that one evil guy from UCLA. What's his name? The zero fat guy.
Zero fat.
You know what I'm talking about, like the number one to reduce and reverse heart diseases.
Like one of the old guys that's a doctor
who's collected many millions of dollars in consulting fees from big food.
Does he have the starch diet?
Like all starch, no fat. No, not McDougall. The other guy. Oh man, it's been so long since I paid attention to guys like that. But he's the number one.
It's okay.
I don't know. It's one of those people like it's not really my world anymore. But the number one low fat guy, and with his stuff, you can make an argument for only selling plant-based things and selling lots of sugar, because as long as you don't eat fat, it's okay. And a calorie is a calorie. And it's a guy who said the only way to reverse heart attack damage and heart disease, to reverse heart disease, is to eat zero fat. That is not true. It's provably not true, but it made its way into big food. And that's why you can have Cheerios that say they're heart healthy. But I also have to call this out. I have met some CEOs of big companies, including some doing several billion a year, who are actively working and saying, you know what, we know that our products aren't good. This is why we've reduced the thickness of our plastic by 60%, and we're working to do better, right? And they're operating on a really high vibration level of love and care and stewardship of their employees and of the environment, even though they're trying to steer a ship. So it's so easy to just say, they're all evil. Most of them want to do good. They just have bad assumptions. And God, you got to look at Amazon when you talk about that too. Same kind of situation there.
Do you think the biggest people out there, the biggest interests, think that they're doing good? I don't want to get too out there, but the people that like really directing things, and they just think, well, the world has too many people and we need to do this for the climate and for this and that.
It really does appear that someone is orchestrating a little bit of a food shortage this year. I don't know, are you following any of that?
Yeah.
And maybe they're doing that for the good of the world, because, how good would it be if only 1 billion people starved to death? And it looks like that's going to happen. It apparently is inevitable from what I can see. And that's atrocious. But there's probably someone out there, maybe someone trained by the Rockefellers who have written papers about this, who is saying, you know what, someone had to do it, and I'm just going to take one for the team and I'm going to go do it. I don't support that view. And that said, it's very hard to live with yourself unless you're one of that 4% of sociopath and psychopaths. Those guys, they're like, I pulled one off. I had control, and they just get pleasure from it. And that's evil. But the vast majority of people who do wrong like that, it's narcissism. They tell themselves a story that they believe so strongly because they want it to be true that they think it's true. So if you tell yourself that I'm a really good person and I'm a savior of humanity if I only kill 1 billion people, and you believe that, hey,
it's better for, they'll say,
I'm a good person. I'm doing this. It's that capacity for self-deception that allows propaganda to work, and it allows trauma to work. And it's the basis of narcissism, that I deserve even though I didn't earn, and I can't be wrong. Therefore, I'm not wrong even while I'm doing all sorts of bad things. It's a bubble of false reality. Well, just like the plant-based diet.
Just like the plant. Okay, we'll get back.
We got to go to protein and plants.
No, I know. Let's go to the nutrition stuff, because, oh man, so many people got hoodwinked by this stuff. Where should we get fat? before we talk about protein specifically, where should we get protein? Where should we get fat?
Mostly animals.
Yes, I agree. We're done. We agreed.
See
We're
ya.
done. No, that's most of the story because
bottom line, that's it.
the mainstream media says the opposite.
Fat. Yeah, but mainstream media says all sorts of weird crap. Like, why would you listen to them? I mean, seriously, if you trust mainstream media for any nutritional information, you probably aren't paying attention. I hate to say it. That's what made me fat. I fervently believed that a calorie was a calorie. I hit 300 pounds in my early 20s, and I'd had 3 knee surgeries because I had arthritis since I was 14. And yes, I was eating margarine and corn oil and minimizing my butter and minimizing fat and all the things you were supposed to do. And I kept getting fatter and fatter. And I had behavioral issues. I had serious brain fog. And I said, all right, the most important thing on earth that I can do is not have another knee surgery. I'm going to lose this weight if it kills me. So I went to the gym and I did 90 minutes a day, half weights and half cardio. I did it 6 days a week. No matter what, even if I had like strep throat or sinusitis or I was really sick, if it was finals, it didn't matter. I went to the gym. And I also cut my calories and I went on a low-fat diet, semi-vegetarian. And at the end of that 18 months, okay, calories in, calories out, exercise off, anything, I still weighed 300 pounds. I could max out all the machines in the gym and I was still fat. And I still had a 46-inch waist. I have a 32-inch waist right now. And what? Well, that taught me a lot. The calories in, calories out. That was mainstream advice, right? And I was reading all that sort of stuff. And I had, people running around, oh, fat, look, there's grease on this bag. How could you eat that grease? So if you look at TV, if you look at magazines and you use those to get your health advice, you're probably not going to like what you get. And I say this, I've had my shirt off in Men's Health. I've, been in all the health magazines for what I do at Bulletproof and all this kind of stuff. And I like to think I helped to change our language around grass-fed, certainly around collagen. I made that $1 billion industry, MCT oil, kind of the guy who made that thing. And I truly believe that if you do that, you're just going to fail. So you have to throw that away and say, what's going to work for me? And I would encourage anyone listening to actually not take your advice and not take my advice, but to go out there and find a metric that you define as success for your health. Is it your energy? Is it your happiness? Is it your fat? Is it that this pain goes away? Is it whatever it is? Is it that that rash that you've had ever since you started eating whole grains? Maybe that, and then start changing things and listen to me, listen to some weird vegan person who's probably very young and very, very ungrounded and very passionate. Anyway, listen to them and then try it and measure. And that's where quantified self came from. And that's where biohacking came from. I just want to do what works. I'll eat gravel all day long. In fact, you're probably not even going to like this. One of the things that I think is going to save the environment is one of the companies that I invested in. And it's a company called 0 Acre Farms that makes a kind of oil called cultured oil. Have you come across this?
I have one right there. I got one of the first bottles.
Oh, me too. I didn't know that. That's awesome. Okay, good.
I turned them down as an advisor. They wanted me to be an advisor, but I was like, I want to be unaffiliated. So I have one and I will maybe promote it, but I'm not part of it.
Got it. Well, so I am an advisor and I am an investor. I wrote a check to them. And I think it's one of the most important companies right now because we can use tech to make food that's more efficient and better for people. Right? So what they're doing is they're fermenting stuff that humans shouldn't eat, like grains and corn and whatever else. And they're turning it into healthy oils that have an identical molecular structure to the kind of oils they want to eat, that are all saturated, monounsaturated, with no polyunsaturated whatsoever, at a lower cost than buying canola oil or soybean oil. So if you're going to eat fried food at a restaurant, which you probably still shouldn't do, it's going to cost less, but it's going to be much safer and more nutritious. So when I say fats should come from animals, well, technically it should come from certain kinds of saturated fats and certain kinds of monounsaturated fats and precious few polyunsaturated fats, but you do need some of those as well. There just is never a shortage.
Yeah, that's a good point, but mainly from animals. And I wonder what's going to happen though if you get in nature, all 3 fats are always present. if you go so low, I don't think it has zero. It has like the 0 acre stuff has like a 1% or something.
There might be 1%. The label says 0, but that's per serving.
Oh.
So if it has less than 1 gram of something per serving, you actually aren't allowed to label it.
I think I don't know if I'm remembering their literature wrong, but I think there's a tiny bit. But what is there? Could there be ramifications with that? Because I'm against seed oils and PUFAs as much as you are, but I'm just curious.
If you only ate a cultured oil that was 0, actually pure 0, omega-6 and omega-3, eventually you'd create deficiencies. You actually need those oils. You need them to be undamaged. And if you look at grass-fed beef, it's around 1.6% omega-6 fat. It's probably about the amount you need.
Well, that's throughout history. That's about what we had.
Yeah.
If you look at our diets, and then what are we now? Some people are up in like double digits, 12, 20%.
Oh, some of them are 40. I mean, if you eat French fries every day and some other processed foods, that's the majority of the fat you eat. It's kind of scary. People say, oh, it can't hurt. I just love my French fries. I have them on Fridays. You take a 1 gram fish oil capsule and it has all these biological effects from 1 gram of a special kind of polyunsaturated fat called DHA or EPA. What is taking 40 grams of a harmful kind of fat going to do? It's kind of scary. I do not ever, under any circumstances, eat fried food at a restaurant. I just won't do it.
I'm there. Yeah, it's a journey. And grass-fed's a journey too. I don't think people do it overnight. It would be nice if they would, to go like 100% regenerative, like the best meat. But
it's really interesting. There's this idea that eating grass-fed is elitist, right? Oh, you're just saying that because you have enough money to eat that. But it's more elitist to say, let the poor people eat bugs and sawdust, which is basically a plant, and somewhat animal-based diet. But that's what's going on here. And I promise you that the billionaires, when they create a world like that, if they succeed in it, they're not going to be doing that, right? Because they'll have cows in their backyard. Like that's just how it's going to be. And they'll like, oh, this butter is really good. Too bad it's so hard to find. So that's what humans do. It's what we've always done. And I am quite certain that when you take someone who says, I can't afford to eat grass-fed, but I either drink alcohol or I eat fast food, it's like, oh no, here's what's going on. You think you can't afford it, but the reality is that you don't know how to cook, right? And you don't have to have a full kitchen to be able to cook. Like the cheapest foods that give you what you need are grass-fed butter, which still, it's more expensive than regular butter, and regular butter is better than margarine, but grass-fed butter is affordable on a per calorie basis. It's 1 billion times cheaper than kale on a per calorie basis, right? And you can get ground frozen stuff like the stuff you make that's sent to you that's reasonably priced. And if you do those things, right, and you get some occasional veggies that are frozen, those are a luxury item. You don't necessarily need it. And then what are you going to do for starch? It's white rice. So if you have white rice, butter, eggs,
and ground beef,
and most importantly, splurge on some herbs. Like have some oregano, have some rosemary. These are what people ate instead of vegetables, because you can't get vegetables the vast majority of the year. I live on an organic farm on Vancouver Island. 3 cows, 25 pigs, 25 sheep, and a couple acres of green stuff, right? The green stuff's only available for very, very brief windows. And yes, you can ferment it, but throughout most of human history, there wasn't a case for fermenting buckets, which you couldn't make, by the way, of cabbage and carrying it around with you.
Yeah, they didn't have like bubblers and like glass jars, and we were moving around with the seasons and all that.
I get some kind of allergies.
I'll let you pause. 57.
There's a few cases where you would do that. Like if you go to Korea, you would bury kimchi. So you could kind of cache some of it and it would ferment underground and you'd come back in a while. So if you were moving around or whatever, you could do that. But the reality is that there isn't much energy.
Let's pause for a second.
Yeah. I wonder what hit me.
It could be. It could be my dog.
I'm not usually allergic to dogs, but
Yeah, nah.
my eyes are watering too.
Yeah.
It's that time of year too, where sometimes
Austin has a lot of mold and a lot of allergens. I've noticed. Even healthy people, like super healthy people I know, they get hit during certain times of the year.
Yeah, I've got a lot of environmental allergies. I always have. They're better than they were, but I think a little bit worse post-COVID. All right, I think I'm back. Are you still rolling? Or?
Yeah. I've just known the 2 times that I'm gonna cut.
And we were
talking about kimchi coming.
Okay.
Around.
The most important thing for humans historically has been calories, right?
Mm-hmm.
And food has these 2 functions. The first and most important is to give you enough energy to keep living. The second one is to provide you nutrients to live effectively. And we prioritize naturally with our taste buds, with our behavior, with our automated systems in the body, foods that provide that. And that has always been some source of starch or possibly sugar. So you have honey if you're in a real luxurious part of the world, but we didn't have that much honey compared to the number of people, and it was hard to get. And then we also had meat and animal fat, which is something that stores exceptionally well. You can make biltong, you can make jerky, and the tallow lasts forever. So like what the indigenous people of the US would do is they would take buffalo, they would dry the meat, and then they would put melted tallow, basically the buffalo fat, back in it, and it would last for a very, very long time. And you don't need to eat very much of it. So you can carry, a month's worth of that with you and travel wherever you want to go, and you always have enough energy. And we have this terrible thing that the plant-based crowd believes in, and it's called ANDI, Aggregate Nutrient Density Index. And this is this weird bit of math trickery. It says, well, we all know nutrients are good, right? Okay, so we can agree on that. Mm-hmm. And this is like a good little NLP kind of thing. Not that I'm a trained in or a master of it, but it's like, so we can agree. You're getting agreement. Yes, nutrients good. Okay, great. Now, you would agree calories bad, right? Now, you and I would just, actually, no, calories how you measure energy. I wanted energy. I like eating calories because calories, as long as my body knows how to use them, they go into muscle, they go into thought, they go into action, they go into being dangerous. But with all of this, okay, well, since calories are bad and nutrients are good, let's just make a little ratio that's comparing nutrients to calories. So if something has low calories and high nutrients, it's going to score high. And something has lots of calories and low nutrients, it would score low. So you look at like a corn chip, it would score very low because it's high calorie and low nutrients. But if you look at something like a piece of kale, there's almost no calories in it, and there's allegedly a lot of nutrients. So then that would score high. Now, what you ignore from that is anti-nutrients and toxins. So, the kale has oxalic acid, but using the ANDI score, I could literally take a multivitamin and some cyanide and mix them together and say, what's the nutrient density of this? And they go, oh my God, that's the highest scoring nutrient density we've ever seen because it's just nutrients and has no calories. And it's like, well, great, then take it. It's plant-based.
Yeah.
So maybe there's a flaw in that logic, but to this day, people are spending more per calorie on kale and spinach and all these things that are not superfoods, that are not good for you, the things that give a lot of people kidney stones and gout and a really painful condition in women where calcium oxalate crystals form in the vulva called vulvodynia that makes it so painful you can't even wear underwear. So, maybe we want to think about our food saying calories are great because they give us energy. And calories that make us not feel hungry right away are really important. And micronutrients matter. And you do not get micronutrients from plants as a general category. You mostly get starch and water from them. What you do get, though, from herbs and spices, you get massive amounts of minerals and you get polyphenols, the colored compounds that actually cause things to happen in your body. So there's a great argument for not doing the carnivore kind of diet where you say, I'm just going to eat meat and salt, although you may need to do that for a little while. There is a much better argument for saying, I'm going to eat meat incredibly crusted with the right herbs, including leaves. And there's some friends out there who are saying, anything that's a leaf, don't eat it. Directionally good, from a detailed, each leaf might do different things, bad, because I think there's a great argument for eating oregano. And if you go back in human history, all of the old trading routes were salt trading routes. Salt was always from the ocean or from a mine, and it always had trace minerals throughout it. And the modern salt we have doesn't have trace minerals. By the way, there's 56 trace minerals added back in Danger coffee, so that when you drink the coffee, you're getting the minerals you're supposed to get. And all of our food, all of our meat, and all of our fish was preserved with rock salt from the ocean that was full of minerals. So every time you ate any source of protein, you always got a big dose of not just sodium, but all of the minerals that come along with it. And all of that is lacking right now. And when you eat these minerals and herbs, when you eat these herbs, they have minerals and polyphenols in them as well. So first, our trading routes were for salt. And then right after that, it was for herbs and spices. They became the spice routes, right? And Britain went around the world for tea and spices and took over a lot of the world for those things. Those are the original multivitamins for us. It's organs and it's herbs and to a certain extent spices. And strangely, herbs are usually better for you than spices, but some spices are medicinally very interesting. No one knows the power of vanilla, for instance. Do you know what vanilla does?
No.
Well, this is why when I was running Bulletproof, I always used whole vanilla beans, even though they got to be really expensive. Vanilla was an aphrodisiac. And have you heard of a vanilloid receptor in the body?
No.
You've heard that cayenne or maybe capsaicin is anti-inflammatory, right? Mm-hmm. Most people don't know that cayenne is anti-inflammatory because it latches onto the vanilloid receptors. Maybe they're called vanilloid because they were first discovered because vanilla activates them. So if you're nightshade sensitive, which I am and a lot of people are, you actually can't eat cayenne, even if you really like it, like I do, because it causes systemic inflammation. But you can eat vanilla that'll trigger the same anti-inflammatory effects. So were we trading on these spice routes because they made stuff taste good? Or were we trading because these were medically useful, active things that improved our nutrition? I think that's what it was. So when I'm eating my grass-fed ribeye from my own cow, it is absolutely crusted with rosemary and oregano and sometimes a little bit of yarrow and whatever else is growing in my garden. And probably some fennel seeds too, because they taste good, even though I don't really grow those. I grow fennel, but the seeds are too much work. They get moldy. So you can do that. And that is provably going to be better for you than something that had 0 plants in it, even though fennels are seeds and oreganos are leaves.
I'm right there with you with herbs. I don't really understand the carnivore people on certain things where the herbs, and I was with the Hadza and the Maasai and the Batwa, the Pygmies in Uganda last year. These people, I mean, they weren't eating mountains of kale, I'll tell you that. They weren't eating plant food, like a lot of plant foods. They did get some tubers that were just purely fibrous, actually, and they spit out the fiber.
Yeah, they're getting the soluble fiber in the starch, right?
They're chewing it. I chewed on it. It tasted fine. You get a little glucose, a little starch. And but we could find herbs, and then it was just an accompaniment to meat. But this is something that we've always eaten. And I think that there's just this wild paradigm in modern health where you're supposed to eat a mountain of kale and spinach. But it's like throughout history, we didn't do that. We had herbs on the side.
And the kale and spinach trashed me when I was a raw vegan. It was so bad for me. Just the incredible joint pain, the phytic acid that comes from things, which is as big a threat as lectin. So my first book, The Bulletproof Diet, it's about to go into, I think it's 10th anniversary in the next year or two. People have lost millions of pounds on it. But chapter 1 is, there's lectins, there's omega-6 fats, there's histamine in food, which is a major issue for some people and not for everyone. And then there's phytic acid and there's oxalates. And these 5 things are probably messing with you. You just need to know, okay, which one is it? None of them are great for humans, but you might be able to handle some of them more than others. And the number of people who are eating fermented foods because they heard they were good for you, and every time they eat them, they get hives and they feel huge amounts of brain fog or they get hot flashes or whatever. Like maybe that kombucha wasn't good for you, right? It's okay if a fermented food doesn't work for you. You should be cautious about, how do you know what's growing in there? The answer is you don't. So you take a bite, and if you feel crappy, then don't eat that one anymore, right? So we have all these religious beliefs about food, and bottom line is all fermented food is not good for you. All plants are not bad for you, but many plants, you can get energy from them, which is great to survive when there's a famine. It's a survival thing for us. It doesn't mean that you should get energy from them on a regular basis.
Don't have to. Well, so now we're kind of zoning in on what is a human dietary framework. Of course, I it's not like a one size fits all, but even that sounds, I hate just saying that because it's such like this trite phrase that people use. Balance. We need a balanced diet, all that type of stuff. But plants are for energy, and certain plants like fruit and tubers, and then animals are for protein and fat. I mean, it seems pretty simple. I mean, it's not completely.
It does seem simple, but fat is a major source of energy when you're metabolically healthy, right? So animals are for building blocks, which is protein, and they're for energy. Actually, building blocks are protein and fat, and energy comes from fat, and it can come from protein in a famine. But if you're burning protein as your primary way of making energy, because of gluconeogenesis, that's a metabolically expensive, relatively free radical producing process that you probably don't have cofactors in place to actually do. Those cofactors would be trace minerals. I don't know. It's almost like you should put those in your Danger Coffee plug. Completely seamless. By the way, do I look like I feel guilty for talking about something that helps people? I don't feel any guilt at all for plugging stuff that matters.
This is a masterclass in plugging your product. I got to do this now for Nose to Tail.
You can overdo it. Yeah. And you're always going to find there's an angry, jealous 3% of people who every time you do it are going to say, look at you, you just care about money, you're a bad person, blah, blah, blah. Here's the deal. There's this thing you can do on social media. It's called ban delete. And it's so incredibly awesome to do this because they spent like 5 minutes on all this vitriol telling you what a bad person you were for doing something that helps people. Okay? They have bad programming. You're never going to convince them. So you just ban and delete them. And when you do that, it creates peace in their life because they can't see your triggering content anymore.
Yeah.
And it took you half a second to do it. And it took them all this hate and time to try and do something that didn't harm you at all. And when you do that, you've cleaned up your own community and you've taken away a source of stress for those poor people who are going to find a source of stress everywhere until they fall into some addictive pattern and then get therapy.
It's a win-win. So go back to gluconeogenesis, because I don't think we should be trying to get energy from protein either.
What? How could you not think that? I mean, what will the calorie people and the keto people think of you?
No, okay. So I always love to talk to every guest about like like how should we eat? What's this? Right?
There's a human framework, but this goes back to mitochondrial biology. Strangely, your mitochondria are not the power plants of your cells the way that we've all been told. They are environmental sensors, and each one senses the environment: light, sound, heat, vibration, nutrient availability, all the stuff that it can get. And then it makes a decision. Do I make energy? Do I make inflammation? Do I make neurotransmitters? Do I make sex hormones? Do I make proteins? So they are manufacturing plants that can do anything you want, including make electrons, but they can do all this other stuff. So they're getting a signal all the time, figuring out what to do. And you don't have my mitochondria, probably thank God for you, and vice versa. So what that means is that the combination of your mitochondrial DNA and your nuclear DNA, oftentimes they're mismatched. You might have nuclear DNA from the North Pole and mitochondrial DNA from the equator, and then you're going to have weird stuff happening in your system. This is just a common human thing. As we've traveled all over the planet, we get these mixed up things. There is no optimal human diet. But what you can do is you can say, number one, make sure you get enough energy or calories in your food and don't spread them out throughout the day. So have an eating window. And my last book was called Fast This Way. And there is no recommendation for a certain eating window. It's depending on your state right now. You maybe shouldn't fast at all, or maybe you should fast for 3 days, but it's state dependent. And when you want to know your nutrient or your human diet thing, don't eat the stuff that makes you weak. And what it comes down to is there's foods that are good for just about everyone. And it's animal fats from animals that are well treated and well processed and well fed. Okay, those bring life to the vast majority of people. But there's someone out there who has a genetic disorder who can't process saturated fats and doesn't have a gallbladder, let's say. So for them, it doesn't count. So number one, it's animal fats. Number two, you're going to need some form of high bioavailability protein. That means animal protein. I'm sorry, gluten is a protein. It is not a very good protein. Plant-based proteins, which you'll find all over the place in health food stores, they're low value proteins, right? And then have some occasional starch or sugar, right? Doesn't have to be a lot. My recommendations have been under 25 grams of fructose a day. Get it from fruit or maybe raw honey if you need raw honey for sleep. And I've been like that for, more than a decade in my recommendations. And people can say, but there's a whole bunch of suspect foods that are in the middle of the roadmap. By the way, daveasprey.com/roadmap. It's free. I'm not trying to sell you anything. The idea here is maybe broccoli works really well for you. Heck, maybe potatoes work really well for you. But they're a suspect food because they have one of those 5 big categories of things that trash human beings. So the real algorithm for knowing what to eat is, number one, stop eating foods that make you weak. And the biggest way of doing that is eat a meal that's high in those foods and see if you're hungry afterwards. So you will be hungry within 4 hours of eating a meal that contains foods you're sensitive to. And if you eat right with enough fat, of the right kinds of fat, and you don't eat any of those suspect foods that are guilty for you, 4 hours later, you're going, I guess I could eat dinner. I don't really need to, but I think I will. But if you threw some kale in there and you're sensitive to oxalate, which a lot of people are, and 2 hours later, you're just looking for a cookie and you feel like you're going to die if you don't eat one, well, that ought to tell you something about the kale. So stop doing what makes you weak. Eat some saturated fat from animals, and dairy fat is probably okay for the vast majority of people in the form of ghee and maybe butter. Probably not milk. And yes, raw A2 milk is going to be better if you can get it. If it works for you, I still feel like crap on raw A2 milk. I'm sensitive to it. I make caseinamorphin. I feel drugged when I have it. And then I want to eat a bunch more and be more drugged. And it's just a downward spiral, but I can handle sheep's milk just fine. So you have to figure out what works for you. And there is nothing that works for everyone. I believe for the vast majority of people, legumes and beans are really not good for you. They are a poverty and survival food during times of food scarcity and drought. They're much better than dying, and I fully support that. But to try and tell yourself they're healthy, I do not believe that. There is such abundant evidence they're not. And if you're going to eat them, they require a huge amount of processing in order to be safer to eat. They're still not ideal. So you could say, but my ancestors ate them, and there's an argument for that. If your ancestors for 10,000 or 50,000 years have been eating beans, you may be able to say, you know what, those are on the suspect but likely to be guilty list. But for my family, if they're cooked right, I can eat them, and they work great for me. Awesome. But don't you dare say that everyone needs to eat beans and legumes to live longer, because that is not how everyone works. It is, don't do the things that make you weak. First and foremost, it's not that hard to figure out what those are.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, pressure cooking beans could work. For humans throughout history had extensive preparation techniques for basically all the plant foods. I've interviewed lots of people on that stuff. And animal foods, we can just eat it and our bodies can use it. It's much more bioavailable. Plant foods, every single one was soaked, fermented, nixtamalized, like all these different techniques that great lengths people went through, because we knew we didn't have science back then, but we had science of observation and what made people weak. And this guy was eating all these, certain things. And him and his wife couldn't have kids. I mean, we had all these observations.
Well, can we talk about the China study for a minute?
Yeah.
Because there's a kind of logic that's in there. So the China study, if you're listening, you've never heard of it, you're probably a new listener. This is a book that is the justification for many, many vegans to say, it's healthy. Animal proteins cause cancer. But the way it works is at the very beginning of the book, in the first chapter, he says, well, there's this lab study where we took mice that are absolutely bred to get cancer, and we gave them aflatoxin, which is a mold toxin that is the most cancer-causing substance we know of to this day to cause liver cancer. So then we gave some of the rats purified casein, which is milk protein that's highly processed, highly purified, and nothing else. And the other rats, we gave them some kind of grains. And the ones who got the genetic modifications plus the toxin that causes cancer plus casein had cancer that grew faster, and they died more than the mice that just ate whatever sawdust they were giving them. Therefore, here's the leap. Therefore, all animal proteins are bad for you because one animal protein that's highly processed is bad for you. That is the premise of the book, and everything else. There's some cooked data, and there's all sorts of other people who've gone through all the science and shown where it's wrong. So that kind of thinking, oh, if you can take this and put it in a bucket, the whole bucket's bad. It is provably false. So here's why. Have you ever heard me talk about my favorite plant-based protein?
I don't know.
It's sarin, the nerve gas that was used in the Tokyo subway terrorist attacks, comes from beans.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, using China study logic, all plant-based proteins will kill you because one of them does. Also, what happens when people eat polar bear liver?
You get vitamin A toxicity.
And then they die, right?
Yeah.
So therefore, all animal-based proteins are bad for you, right? Oh, and let's just go into the forest and pick a few whatevers are growing and eat those. Therefore, all plants will kill you, right? And so pretty much you're going to die. Maybe we can take that thinking out and we can say this radical thing. Different fats do different things to your body, and different proteins do different things to your body. So when someone comes along and there's like these stereotypes and they match so well, you get the keto bro. Dude, if you eat another carb, you're going to be a bad person. And yeah, I've already lost my morning kickstand and my hair's falling out, but I know the keto diet works. And those are only happening because I'm not keto enough. Like I'm going to brush off that little bit of carb that might have landed on there. Right. And literally people fall into this trap. By the way, that sounds a lot like some of the Atkins dieters who, like me, I lost 50 of my 100 pounds on the Atkins diet many years ago. The other 50 wouldn't go because I was eating inflammatory stuff that was still not a carb. Right. So we have the keto people. We have the calorie people. Well, of course you can cancel out a Snickers bar. Just drink a diet soda and get on the treadmill and you'll be fine. Right. And this doesn't work. And it's kind of mean-spirited. You get the plant-based people. And you get the carnivore people, but they all fall into this trap of if something's good, more of it's better. And you can't do that if you want to be nutritionally accurate. And you can't fall into this camp that says you need this amount of protein per day. It's garbage thinking. If you don't tell me what protein it is, that amount of sarin gas protein is enough to kill 1 million people. So you have to tell me what it is. And a few of the carnivore people got really mad when I wrote my anti-aging book. See, you can choose what you want your biology to do. I have a book on, what to eat so you're never hungry, you lose weight, you have your basic health. That's a bulletproof diet. I have a book on everything you can do to make your brain work better called Head Strong. And I have a book on what you do to live to 180 called Superhuman. And my recommendations are different for the type of protein and amount of protein in each book. And the type of protein is the big thing. So when I said something like there's a pretty strong amount of evidence that says you want a half a gram of protein per kilo or per pound?
Per pound.
Yeah.
If it's half, it'd be per pound.
It was per pound. But it was a little bit lower than what a lot of people, especially
some people say 1 pound, 1 gram per pound.
That's what I would have said 10, 15 years ago. But they're not making a difference between the kind of protein. And what I also say in the book that conveniently people forget when they're trying to do the I'm angry, therefore I'm going to make people who disagree with me into bad people. Unless you're using collagen protein, because if you increase the amount of glycine in your protein, you can eat more protein, and the glycine to methionine ratio is very important. And if you're doing intermittent fasting or longer fasting, you can also bump up your protein because you have times when your mTOR levels are very low. And the reason that animal protein might be cancer causing, although I don't really think it is unless you actually make histamine out of it or burn the crap out of it or put nitrates and sulfates and other stuff in it. But generally speaking, properly prepared animal protein isn't pro-cancer unless you're eating it every 2 hours all day long. Anyway, lots of detail there. What you want to end up doing is saying, I can eat a lot more protein as long as I can digest it and as long as I keep my ratios where you want them to be, right? That's a different discussion. But someone says, how much protein should you have per day? Well, you can buy keto cookies that are all gluten protein. How much of that should you eat per day? 0, right? So it doesn't mean anything. Talking about the amount of protein you're going to eat every day is exactly the same as talking about the number of calories you can eat every day. You must specify the type of protein or it is a meaningless conversation.
I'm glad we got into the protein stuff. That's what I wanted to ask you about, because maybe it's just because I saw one of your reels and it was just like, we're getting entirely too much protein. And it was like some little rant on that. And I just wanted to talk about it. But you're right. You brought up all these nuances. The methionine to glycine is huge. And there's like rodent studies that kind of prove that out.
And you and I might be getting too much protein, but it also depends on what kind it is, obviously. The vast majority of people aren't getting too much protein, or they're getting the wrong kind of protein. So in the context of that reel, that was specifically about my anti-aging book. Mm-hmm. And if you want to live a long time, there's a case for protein restriction, at least time-based protein restriction, and that's called intermittent fasting.
Time-based, yeah. So I know the plant-based crew, or even the longevity doctors, you get the Walter Longos, or like that other guy. What's the other guy's name?
David Sinclair.
Sinclair.
Yeah.
And then
David. He's a good friend.
Well, they're talking about mTOR, and I'm like, well, how much mTOR? If you guys are eating like 5 times a day because you're on these plant-based foods and how much sugar and how much all this. Yeah, I'm eating protein twice a day. I'm eating in a smaller window. And I'm eating a good source of animal grass-fed protein, and I'm not eating insane amounts either. I don't know if people think I'm not a Sean Baker type, but I also just don't want to make it sound like protein is bad. It's like
People who say protein's bad are generally weak people. Let's be straightforward, and they're probably traumatized, which is why they went on a plant-based diet. There's only 3 reasons people go plant-based. Right. One of them is because they're traumatized and the thought of an animal dying is so bad to them, they can't handle it. They don't know they're killing more animals with a plant-based diet than animal-based diet, but at least, it didn't have a face. Okay. Get a fucking therapist. Seriously. I'm so done with that. All right. The second one would be, I'm going to save the environment. And this is provably false, because the most important thing the animals make aside from meat is poop, because poop makes soil and soil pulls carbon out of the air. And people oftentimes say, well, what do you know about that? Have you heard of Elon Musk's $100 million carbon capture X Prize?
I think so.
Okay. Well, he said, I'm going to give $100 million to the first team who can pull however many gigatons of carbon out of the air. The first $50,000 that went into making that X Prize was a charitable donation that I made after a passionate speech about pulling carbon out of the air. And I believe we need to actually be able to have conscious control of the exhaust gases on our planet, because big industry is trashing it. Plus, maybe there's some environmental stuff. So you know what? Cows are the way you do that, because they make soil. And if you can look at systems biology, you just need to do it. So there's no argument for health for plant-based. There's no argument for the environment for plant-based. And there's no argument for animal cruelty for plant-based. And when you look at those 3 things, you're like, oh, you just can't justify it. You have to do willful misthinking in order to do it.
I think there's a lot of disinformation out there about this. And so to finish up the protein talk though. So I know all the recommendations are different. We can't just say there's a one size fits all, but what is the final sort of thoughts on protein and how much, and just like the good and the bad?
So what are the final thoughts on how much?
Yeah.
So you just fell into the calorie.
Not how much, but how to do it. how to be thoughtful about protein. What are how to be thoughtful about protein recommendations?
Okay, before we get there, we got to finish up on mTOR.
Okay.
What raises mTOR 10 times more than protein?
Probably sugar.
Exactly. Right. So carbs, in particular sugar. And by the way, it may not be precisely 10 times more. It is many times more, but don't trust me on the 10 times just to be scientifically accurate. So if you're eating carbs throughout the day, your mTOR levels, you're just going to get old. It's bad for you. Right. But if you're eating protein, morning, snack, lunch, afternoon, dinner, before bed, which is what you do so you don't go into starvation mode. I mean, this is straight up 90s advice. And if you're eating a high protein diet and you're eating a low fat, high protein diet, because that's how you're supposed to get lean and ripped and all of that, well, then you're forcing your body to burn protein to make energy, which is metabolically expensive and probably not very good for you from a mitochondrial perspective. There's 2 places where you can use amino acids to throw out some electrons there, but it's much, much less biologically efficient. than burning fat, which is the most efficient, or burning carbs. So what to do with protein? It depends. How much stress are you under right now? If you're stressed, you need more protein. Did you lift heavy? You need more protein. Did you sleep all night and you're completely fine and you don't really have any detoxing to do? Eat less protein. Don't eat protein all the time. Probably the most convincing argument for this is my friend James Clement, who wrote a book called The Switch. I've known James for 20 years, from like very early days of the anti-aging movement. And he says, here's what I do. He goes, I eat a low inflammation, very low protein diet for a month. And then the next month, I go on a high protein, high fat, like almost carnivore diet, because you need mTOR to be strong, and you need low mTOR to live a long time. These are both sides of the same coin. So when someone says, how much protein should I eat every day? Like, wouldn't it be great if we could just wake up and like robots do the same thing every day and get great results? It really depends on what you did. I can tell you that if I didn't get enough sleep and I'm jet lagged, I'm going to eat more protein. If I lifted heavy, or actually I don't even really lift, I'm doing upgrade labs, like different other muscle stimulating, muscle breaking down things that are more efficient, I'm going to eat a ton of protein. Like I can tell you, I have about 40 grams of protein in my Danger coffee right now, and only a little bit of it's collagen. The other is some magic stuff I'm working on. It's mostly peptides and things. So I'm not opposed to protein at all. We also, in that conversation, have to say biological value of the protein. So if you were to take straight amino acids that are already completely broken down, you probably only need like 15 grams of that twice a day, right? And if you're eating vegan nonsense protein that's full of protein blockers like tryptase inhibitors, what you end up with is you could eat tons and tons of that protein and nothing good is going to happen from it. In fact, you'll have to eat animal protein to overcome the protein inhibitors that are built in to keep you from eating those plants. So which of those proteins were we talking about in this conversation again?
Well, my crowd is only eating the good grass-fed meat proteins.
So you're going to take out all the garbage proteins.
Yeah.
Now let me ask you this. Is your crowd also taking protease and betaine HCl with every meal?
Probably not.
So how do they know how much of that protein they're digesting? We have a problem here, don't we? Could it be that different people digest protein differently? They do. So one of the cheapest and best things you could do if you're listening to the show with your grass-fed steak, which by the way, yes, I grow my own grass-fed steaks and eat them. I am full on in that camp, have been for a very long time. You need to be taking digestive enzymes with it, and probably betaine HCl, which increases stomach acid. And why do you do this? You do this because it increases your body's ability to absorb the proteins and the fats that come from it, which means you can eat less protein. What you don't want is protein fermenting in your gut and making ammonia, because this is provably bad for you. And we don't even know if that may be one of the reasons that higher protein taken all day long of specific kinds of protein in some circumstances isn't associated with living a longer time. So if you have bad farts from eating protein, you probably are eating too much or you're not digesting it. So when I eat my protein and my very large steaks, which I'm very happy to, I'll eat a 16-ounce steak, no problem. I only eat once a day, but my metabolic rate with all the hacks I've done, I'm 3,000 calories a day, right? So that means I don't have a problem with a steak and I'll put some extra fat on it. Like it's all good. But I always take protease, which is enzymes that'll break up protein, so I can get more amino acids out of that steak, and I can make better use of my steak than you can if you don't do it. Even if you're young and really healthy, there's an upper limit to how many protein degrading enzymes you can make at one time, and you can store and you can release in the gut. So it gets to the point where my answer is going to be, it depends almost always. But I will tell you, eat your steak, take some digestive enzymes with it, and if you have done substantial amounts of working out, you have substantial toxins, or you have substantial stress, you bump your protein up. And if you're in chill mode and you're not in restore mode, maybe you should try fasting where you don't eat any protein and break your fast with some protein. And that's okay. And if you do it that way, you can bump up your protein. And if you're worried about it, which I don't like worrying, but let's just say you're concerned about the potential effects of animal protein because of excess methionine, have a couple scoops of collagen. Like that's how you do it, or bone broth, which would have been done traditionally anyway. And what that does is it cancels out the slight excess protein, because we know that collagen can actually degrade to butyrate in the gut. And I wrote about the first study that I think anyone ever wrote about. I remember talking with David Perlmutter about 8 years ago, where they found that cheetahs could do that. And that was the first proven example of a bacteria doing it. So you need collagen. You might as well have some collagen with your steak, and you might as well have some digestive enzymes with that. And don't eat steak, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and dessert, and you're going to be fine. And your body will guide you to how much to eat. It is not the same for every person, and that's okay.
Good answer. I would have to agree. And I'm glad you put in the point that you grow your own steaks and or meat and eat your own big old steaks. Because some people maybe out there just thought you were, against it.
I think there was some radical angry dude who really mischaracterized something. I don't remember who it was, because honestly, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But no, I'm the guy who made collagen a thing.
Yeah.
Anyone who's read my diet book, The Bulletproof Diet, it's the grass-fed meat is at the center of that. And so is everything that you've read in lots of these later books that have come out, even around lectins, around phytic acid. All of that is in the first chapter of the book, saying and it's not just one of those things. But if you don't have a grass-fed, especially grass-fed fat-centric diet, you're simply doing it wrong. And the protein levels do vary greatly. Low protein is bad for you. Moderate protein is probably what most people need unless they actually exercise, which most people don't. And high protein is what you need right after you exercise, but not every day.
I love it. Sounds like we're right on the same page with all the diet stuff. I try to be in the camp, no camp, and I go from, Weston Price 100 years ago to even before that, to your stuff, to anyone's stuff. I take it all in, and I think we've kind of landed on the same thing. So making a 6-part series about this. We just watched the intro before this podcast. So we're trying to get all of this information in the 6-part series.
Nice. When's the last time you ate a bean?
Maybe 3 years. I don't know.
I don't remember. For me, it's been so long. I know that when I was a vegan, I was doing it all the time, and it just wrecked my gut. I'm not doing that anymore.
I'm not about it. Once I learned about anti-nutrients, once I learned about bioavailability, there is a clear path that humans should eat. Obviously, it's all the context, all the stuff we've been saying this entire time, but there is a framework or a path, whatever you want to call it, that makes sense to get your nutrients that are actually bioavailable, that don't have anti-nutrients blocking them, that gets you the right energy, makes your mitochondria work, makes you feel good. It's pretty clear when you kind of get down to it like that.
It's very clear, and avoid the things that make you weak first. And it's usually anti-nutrients. And then there's some foods that just aren't going to work for you, whether it's anti-nutrients or something else. But at the center point of your plate, and this has been my consistent advice in every one of my books, including my anti-aging book, is that your protein comes from grass-fed beef, lamb, or goat if you eat that stuff, then pork because of the omega-6 thing. And this is 10-year-old advice. And after that, it would be goose, then turkey, then duck, then chicken. And I think after that would be guinea pigs, but they're not really on the list.
Yeah.
And chicken's at the very bottom of the proteins. But would I rather eat chicken than a fake burger? Hell yeah. But I actually don't eat either one. I just fast if that's all that's on the menu.
I love that. Chicken's at the bottom of the totem pole. We're doing the low PUFA diet chicken. So we get no corn, no soy. We try pasture raised.
That's what I do with my chickens.
Yes. You got to do it all right. And also you forgot bison in the first group.
Yeah. They're kind of like cows,
meat.
but
it's the same thing. People get it.
And water buffalo too, if you want to be technical about it.
Exactly. Man, we're running out of time here. I know we could talk all day. Thanks so much, man. This was awesome. I'm glad to do this interview in person. And man, where can people find you? People probably already know, but
just go to daveasprey.com or try the new Danger Coffee, because you kind of want all these trace minerals. So it's going to be really good for you. And anyone who says you can't have coffee on a carnivore diet because it comes from a bean, dude, there's enough studies, hundreds of them, saying that coffee is a superfood and makes you live longer. I don't care where it comes from. I care what it does.
I had a argument with Paul Saladino 4 years ago. He came into Dr. Gary's office and we argued about coffee, and it was a whole thing.
He's a friend. I love Paul. He's a hoot. And we just disagree. I troll him on his page about coffee all the time, and vice versa. And I'm like, yep, I guess when I said I haven't eaten a bean in a long time, coffee
Coffee
beans don't
bean.
count because they're actually a seed.
It's the only beans I eat is coffee beans. All right, Dave. Thanks so much.
You got it, Brian.
Ooh.